I would say when Scott was born, he was a really young age, he was just, he had some kind of energy. He was funny, he was loud. And if Scott came into a room, like you knew he was there. He kept everybody going, and he was really popular right the way through school, right up till high school. He was really family orientated as well. He was famous with his pals for kind of clowning about. He had a great personality, a really good personality, and he was always the one that I used to get sent numerous videos for his pals if they had been out like drinking or whatever. He was always the one that was up kind of making everybody laugh, and he was a life and soul of a party. He did have a really good personality, but at the same time he never ever caused any bother. Scott was really respectful. Even if he went out with his pals, he would phone and ask me, is it all right if I have a drink? Or is it all right if I stay at my pal's house? He never did anything like without asking for permission, but he respected everybody. He was, and a lot of people have said that's credit to me, but I don't think I can take credit for that. I think it was just his nature. It's just the way he was. He was a really good, really lovely laddie to have about. He really was. He does. He has an older brother, Brian. Brian's 25, and he has a younger brother, Argyle, who's 14, and a stepbrother who's 11. He's AJ. He has kids for his dad's side as well. He has a brother and a sister for his dad's side as well. Brian is quite quiet. He's quite laid back. Argyle tends to be, he's kind of natured quite like me. He's quite outgoing, but at the same time, he's not very outspoken. Whereas Scott liked to wind everybody up. He was the one that kind of, like, he would wind them up and then get them into trouble because he had a massive big smile and he could wrap everybody around his finger. So he would maybe do something in the house and then they would shout "mum," or whatever, and then he would always get away with it because it was just, he never ever got the blame for anything, Scott, but it was just the way that he was. So his first word was ball, right from the get-go. Anything that he could see, he would kick. He was right into football like as soon as he could walk, I would say. And then he started playing football when he was 6. And round about maybe 7 or 8, he started to get noticed by the coaches, and coaches were approaching us and saying, he's got something like really good. And so he went for that to moving from team to team. And then we put him to Scotland Football Club, and he just took right off for there. That's when Hearts and Rangers and all the bigger teams, Falkirk and stuff like that, started to notice him. But anything sports-wise, academic-wise, Scott was never really, I wouldn't say he didn't bother, but he was never reading and writing and things. He kind of struggled with a wee bit right the way through school. But anything to do with sport, Scott just thrived in, and he was just natural at it, whether it be snowboarding, skiing, football, basketball, cycling, anything. Put any sport in front of him and he just thrives at it. He just had a gift for it naturally. So he ended up with Partick Thistle. He played with Partick Thistle, I say, maybe for about 3 years on their pro youth, and then he decided that he didn't want to play anymore. So he kind of came away and he never done anything, and then he came home one day and announced that he wanted to start boxing. And he was quite tall but thin. He never had a lot. He wasn't like big built or anything. So I kind of thought, okay, but I didn't think it would go anywhere. And we brought him down to Sparta the first night, and he came home and he was absolutely buzzing. He said he loved it, and he went for the changing him in 6 months through obviously his training. And Sam and all that were telling him obviously what to eat and things like that. And he was really regimented, Scott. So he did everything that they told him to do to the T. So the change in him in even 6 months was massive. And within a year of training with Sparta, he was the Scottish novice champion at boxing. So again, he was just a natural. He just took to it. But he wasn't cocky. Where he knew he was good at it, but he never used it other than obviously in the gym or anything like that. He was good. There was a time when he started to kind of take no well, he fell away for it a wee bit. But even though Scott wasn't at the boxing, Sam kept in touch with me, and you know, if I was concerned about Scott or anything like that, I reached out to Sam and Sam helped. So we managed to get him back. And again, after he had been here just for a few weeks, he was 100% focused on it again. And he definitely had plans. He even looked into joining the army and going into the boxing through the army. So he definitely 100%. I think that would have been what he wanted to do. I think there's 100 different things that they can learn when they're here, whether it be the discipline. Also, if they can release their frustrations. That they're a lot more focused. Scott was 100% focused when he was training, even if he wasn't just training for a fight. When he was training for a fight, he was obviously it was more. But even just coming, because he knew that Scott never just trained on the nights he was supposed to train. Sometimes Scott was down here 6-7 times a night. He gave everything 110%, and I had a massive. I think that was Scott's outlet. You know, he used to come down here and he would use that if he wasn't feeling right or whatever, and the support of the guys at the gym and the guys that he was training with. I think it's really important, even for the mixing and stuff like that. But also, as I said, for the discipline, but also it's just for their fitness, their stamina. Scott changed 100% through the boxing. So I would say maybe about 6 months prior to us finding out how ill Scott was, Scott indicated that he was having thoughts of paranoia. Just along the lines, he thought all his friends were talking about him and stuff like that. He's always had a really close network of friends, so I speak to them because I've always kind of went about my house. They still come about my house. They still come to my mum's. So I approached a couple of them and said, you know, this is what Scott's saying. Is this like what's happening? And they had said no. You know, we've never, nothing like that. We've never spoke about Scott. So I sat Scott down and I said to him, you know, I think you're maybe just a wee bit paranoid, and is there anything else? No, it's fine, everyone's all right. I've spoke to my friends. So, but I think that was the first time when I thought, right, there's maybe something a wee bit untoward here that I kind of need to keep an eye on. So I was aware that he maybe wasn't 100% for probably about 6 months before we realised how ill he was. It wasn't difficult to sit down and speak to him because I've had the 3 boys on my own for a long time, so I've got a great relationship with him. So sitting down and speaking to him wasn't a problem. I would say it was more kind of how much, depending on how he felt, that would depend on how much he would actually speak about. And obviously there's a massive stigma attached to everybody's obviously mental health, but I think guys especially, it's 100 times worse. So, and I think Scott probably had the fear as well that, you know, if I tell her, my mum, she's going to, you know, like take me to the doctors. And I think at that point, at the very first point, I didn't think he was quite ready to speak to the doctor. So I spoke to my GP, but that's probably when I realised as well that there's not a lot of help out there for them. There's nothing really for them, So I was trying to kind of manage it myself and just keep an eye on them, and just trying to obviously get him down to the boxing because I knew how good that was for him. But it was difficult. It was difficult for me, especially when I knew that I started to read up on stuff on the internet and that. But a lot of it's really dated, you know, and a lot of it, Scott didn't fit into any character. Like they have characters. Like characteristics. So if they say, like, if they're unemployed, if they're having relationship problems, if they've got money problems, all these type of things, this is the type of people that would suffer from mental health, or this is the type of people that would be suicidal. Scott didn't fall into any of the categories. So I was kind of like, well, where do I go with this? You know, who do I approach? And then obviously when Scott did come forward and say like how ill he was, I thought, right, I really have to try and get him help. But even at that, I still found that really difficult. I started noticing it with Scott, just in silly wee things, probably because he was mine, like because Scott had went through the football and he was always big on his appearance. His hair was always a massive thing with him, and he shaved his hair off. That was the first time I thought, right, there's something not right. He wasn't buying clothes or anything anymore, and well, I was buying them obviously for him, but he wasn't asking for clothes or anything like that, so he wasn't really looking after his appearance the way he had been previously. And that's when obviously I sat him down and I said to him, at first he had said no, he was fine. And then there was an incident that happened at night, and when I spoke to Scott when I got him home at night, that's when he told me that he was having suicidal thoughts and that he was self-harming. And he was totally open about it. I mean, I said to Scott, can you show me? And he did. He showed me, and he told me everything that he was thinking about and what he had tried and stuff like that. So I said, right, well, this is what's going to happen in the morning. We're going to have to phone the NHS 24. We'll take you to the hospital. Phoned his dad. His dad came, and we took him to the hospital. They did eventually give us an appointment. And he was open. If you put Scott in front of a doctor, he would be 100% open and honest. He told them, and he showed them, obviously, what he'd been doing. And that's when I realised as well, because when I seen what Scott had been doing, a lot of Scott's injuries were all healed. So I knew that he had been doing it for a lot longer than what he had told me. So he'd obviously been struggling himself for a long, long time and trying to put a face on it. But when we left the hospital, we asked if they would keep Scott in, because we were terrified, because he was actively trying to take his life. He wasn't just saying he was thinking about it. So we were petrified. So I said to the doctor at the hospital, like, can you keep him in? Scott's prepared to stay in. He's scared himself. He doesn't know why he's feeling the way he's feeling. He doesn't understand it. And they said no, he would be put on a waiting list. And we were released that night with nothing, no information, nothing, just a referral to a local organisation, and that was it. In the beginning, I think, because as I said, after Scott's first attempt at suicide when we left that hospital, our first reaction was to keep him in. Like, you're not getting out. You know, we have to be with you 24/7 to make sure that's the only way that we can keep you safe. When he started to feel a bit better, me and his dad decided that he would be with his dad, so he'd go to work with his dad through the day and then be in the house with me at night. We did that, I would say, maybe for about 8 weeks, and then because you didn't get any help from anybody, nobody says, you know, this is a good idea, that's a bad idea. I was worried that it was maybe more detrimental to his health. I was keeping him in and keeping him away from his friends and stuff. So I went to him and I said, right, okay, you can go out, but you have to be back at a certain time. And if I phone you, you have to answer. And give him his dues. I mean, he did. If he went out, he came in. If you phoned him, he always answered. If he didn't answer straight away, he phoned you right back. So it kind of went like that back and forward for a few months. And then he had a second attempt at suicide. So again, we went back through the whole thing with going to the hospital, and the same thing was we were released with no help, nothing else. We were told he would be about, he could be up to 18 weeks before he got to see a specialist. They gave him 20 milligrams antidepressants, which I questioned because I didn't know why they were medicating him when he hadn't been diagnosed, he hadn't even been assessed. But however, looking back now, I probably should have questioned it, but I didn't know. So I think to myself, well, the doctors obviously know better than me. I'm just going to go with whatever they're saying. So again, we left hospital and it was just a waiting game. After he came out that time, I just said to him, do you know what? If you want to go out, you go out. You know, I was too scared to keep him in because I didn't want to isolate him any more than what he obviously was. And I knew that when he was with his friends or whatever, you know, that he would probably be all right. His friends knew what was happening. So they would have came to me if there was anything had happened. But no, I did eventually start letting him back out, aye. It was the same thing. No, we got the same thing, and I was constantly, Scott was crying out for help. Scott was asking when we took him, both times that we took him to the hospital, Scott asked him for help. It was to the point where Scott told them what he was planning on doing, told me what he was planning on doing, but there was just nothing. There was nobody. I reached out to a couple of local charities Well, they're no local, there's none in Falkirk. One was, I think the closest was Bathgate, just for some information on how to keep him safe, because even with the self-injury, I'd never came across that before, and the doctor was saying, you know, he's self-injuring to stop himself from taking his life. So I was saying, well, do I stop him then, or do I let him do it? And the doctor said, that's a good question. You know, so anywhere that we went to for help and advice, we never got anything at all. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. He did get his first appointment through. They tried to discharge them about 3 weeks before he got his first appointment through, but I phoned up and said, you know, you can't discharge him. We've waited 10 months. He needs to be seen by somebody. They did offer him, obviously, on the telephone, but when Scott was ill, he was quite awkward. He didn't. And he was a young teenage boy. He wasn't great at speaking to people and things like that. He gave permission for me to handle his care right at the very beginning. So when they were phoning him and things, he wasn't answering or he wouldn't speak to them. But he wasn't well, you know, and a lot of the time he didn't. And he didn't know a lot of the time why he was feeling the way he was feeling anyway. So he probably wouldn't have been able to put it into words. So I pushed and said, you know, he needs to see somebody. If you put him face to face with somebody, he'll open up to them. He'll tell them. He's done it previously. He really needs to see somebody. And he's seen somebody. He got his first appointment on the 21st of December. And he'd went in, and I've seen his medical notes now, and said that he was fine. Aye, the tablets are working. Aye, I'm feeling better. Aye, everything's all right. But he still thinks that people can read his thoughts. And they wrote underneath it seems fine. We'll see him in 8 weeks. And 9 days later, Scott took his life. So I believe that by that time he got that appointment, he had just gave up, because he had been asking, and we had been asking continuously for help, but nobody would help us. Nobody. The only one place that the NHS in this area sends you to, and I'm not blaming them, I'm not blaming an individual, it's the whole system. The one place that they send everybody to, the waiting list. Some people are waiting 18 months. Some kids are on waiting lists for 18 months. And I mean, when Scott was in crisis, he needed the help then. You know, no, and one of the questions that they asked him as well was, have you made a plan? You know, well, no, not the day, because his plan was last night. You know, we've just managed to get him into hospital the now, but that seems to be how they act. If they think you've got a plan, they'll step in. They see that as you being in crisis, but Scott was in crisis, I think, for months and months, and he was just crying out for help and he just couldn't get it. It was horrendous, and it's something that I don't think anybody, and it's not just affected us, like as a family, like my side of the family and his dad's side of the family. It's affected all his friends. It's affected obviously his coaches. It's affected everybody that met Scott. Scott left an impact on. Everybody remembers him, even if they only met him for 5 minutes. Everybody remembers him. It was just the type of person that he was, and the effect that losing Scott's been, it's just been massive, And I now obviously have his older brother and his younger brother, and they're now suffering from mental health because they're trying to obviously trying to deal with it, you know. And again, I had to reach out privately to get help for us as a family to get through this, because you didn't get offered any help. His friends, I've now put in place help for his friends through Scott's Foundation, because they've not had any support on how to deal with that loss. It's just, I didn't think we'll ever, and I know I'll never get over it. I miss him every second, every day. And I know I talk about him all the time, and I think that's the way that I kind of cope with it, is to talk about him, because even though we only had him for, well, he was 4 days short of his 17th birthday, but he'd done so much, and accomplished so much in such a short time, and he deserves to be remembered. He was a really, really, really nice boy, and I honestly believe that had they stepped in and helped when we were asking for help, that we would have had a different outcome. I really believe that. So it came about really because my son started a GoFundMe, and I think it was originally for Scott's funeral, but we didn't need it. We didn't need the money for Scott's funeral, but there was thousands and thousands of pounds there, and I didn't know like what to do with it. But for the minute that Scott passed away, parents started messaging me on Facebook, on Instagram, just sharing their own stories and their own journeys with their own kids, and they were all the same. You know, it was all the same kind of story. They couldn't get help. They didn't know what to do. They were terrified to leave their kids. So I kind of thought, right, there's something we need to do something here, and that's how the foundation was founded. And what we aim to do is we're starting to make training courses. Because a big thing for me when Scott was ill was, as I said, I never got any help. I never got any information on how to keep Scott safe or how to manage his illness. So I want to put a training course together that will be specifically for parents or family members that are supporting kids through mental health, and they can come on that. And I'm also hoping to do one for the coaches with the boxing, educate as many people as we can to spot the signs and then know obviously how to keep the kids safe. And then to raise awareness as well, to raise awareness for suicide and mental health, because as I said as well, there's a massive stigma. And I speak about Scott's story, hoping that somebody that's listening will maybe hear it and think, you know, well, I'm in that situation as well, or my child's in that situation and she's talking about it, so maybe it's all right if I step up and talk about it. Maybe, you know, if I speak about it, they'll help me, or for kids to hear, you know, and for kids or anybody that's in suicidal ideation to hear the impact that if they take their life, the impact that has on other people. I know that, I mean, Scott used to say to me, you'd be better off if I wasn't here, and he really believed that. So I think that Scott, by taking his life, thought he was doing us a favour, and it couldn't be any different for the truth. I mean, it's devastated everybody in our family. Eh? So for people to hear that and to maybe realise, and then give them the hope and know that if they reach out, you know, people will help them. There is support there for them. They're not going to, okay, they're going to be on a waiting list for however long, but during that time that you're on the waiting list, you know, contact us. If we can help you, we can signpost you to other organisations that can. I asked Sam to get involved with it because when Scott was training and when he wasn't training, it was like night and day. And I think it really helped his mental health, because you change your eating, you know, you're exercising regularly, you're mixing with people, you're focused, you've got a goal. And even if there was days where Scott was like, oh, I'm not really feeling it today, he always felt great when he came back. So it's just about getting yourself out there. So I asked Sam if he would team up with us to offer the boxing and all that for the kids. And hopefully, we're still kind of in the early stages of that, but we're hoping to be able to put some kind of funding in place for kids that maybe their families can't afford it or whatever, you know, just so that we can get the kids out of the house and get them involved. So that's really basically where we are now. As I said, we've only been going for, I think it's about 3.5 months. But already the awareness that we've raised, the people that want to get involved with it's massive, which is great, because it's good that it's getting out there, but it also shows us that there's a massive, massive need for it. And there's so many people, young people, that are struggling. So just if we can help one, then job done.